All right, I will go ahead and call this meeting of the CJCC Executive or Operations Committee to order. I am Chris Corpola, the Human Services Director, and Sarah, do you want to run through the roster of people for folks that are on virtually?
You bet. So we've got IT support with Krista Vind, we got County Manager Paul Miller, we've got Menominee Chief of Police Eric Atkinson, Chris Corpola, Director of Human Services, Judge Jim Peterson, DOC Supervisor Aaron Chernahouse, County Board Chair Dave Bartlett, County Board Supervisor Jim Tripp, Clerk of Court Katie Shalley, Sheriff Kevin Bigg, and I think we've got the full group other than the two new judges that are in training, but we've got Andrea. Forget Andrea, our district attorney. There's our roll call. All right, back to you, Chris.
Okay, I'm quadruple tasking. Okay, I will look for a motion for approval of the minutes from the June 23rd meeting.
Move, Tripp.
Second.
Second, Sheriff, any discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so given that the world is changing since earlier this morning, even as it comes to meetings, we did want to have a conversation about the method for future meetings and if we wanted to be in person, virtual, or hybrid. I told Sarah, as Sarah and I were discussing the agenda for this meeting, I said my preference is that we either go all virtual or all in person, because it feels like the hybrid meetings create a section of second-class citizens who are hanging out virtually but not necessarily able to participate. I mean, it seems like if you have a group in person, this is my perspective, you have a group in person, there's a conversation that occurs between that in-person group, and the people that are appearing hybrid have to be super assertive to hop in. But that's my personal perspective. So I said, well, let's throw it on the agenda and see what people's preferences.
I will volunteer that as far as I'm concerned, meeting remotely works as well or better than in person for this group of highly dedicated and very busy individuals. It's a lot easier for Andrea and the judges to join without having to travel.
Got a thumbs up from, yep, got a thumbs up from Kevin. Eric, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing that the county manager said. You just stole my thunder. I think it's a good way to go. It's easier for everybody too. Plus, we're seeing that substantial spread increase. So I anticipate some of those kinds of things will come up in the future, and this just makes it easier, I think, for everybody. And I agree with you too, Chris, about keeping it consistent, either all virtual, all in person. And I certainly am in favor of keeping it all virtual right now for at least the foreseeable future.
Anyone have strong opposition to that? Speak now or forever hold your peace, or at least until we revisit it the next time. All right, we will go with virtual meetings for the foreseeable future. Second consideration of action is drug endangered children event for DHS courts and law enforcement. I don't know who wants to take the lead on that.
I can, unless Andrea wants to speak to it or jump in, Andrea. But our DEC group met recently and was in favor of putting together an event for human services, court personnel, and law enforcement, kind of a meet and greet, but really keeping the relationships moving, or connecting, keeping things moving ahead. more of a social event versus a formal event. And we were thinking about September, October timeframe, with August kind of being a busy month for some folks. So really needed the support from leaders here. So sheriff, chief, director corpola, and the court personnel that we're going to commit to an event and get as many people out to this event as possible. This was, of course, when we were glowing because everyone's vaccinated and things were looking up. So I don't know if that changes the situation with the current kind of resurgence of COVID, but just throw it out there. And Andrea, anything that you'd like to add in addition to that?
Just that I think it's really important to have an event like this, given the turnover in law enforcement and turnover in social workers. It's the face-to-face connections that tend to make better cases, I think, and would encourage, law enforcement to reach out to human services when we do have these deck matters. I did speak with investigator Mary Field, and she suggested perhaps that we hold the event more in the judicial center to get more buy-in from law enforcement. We were originally doing it at the community services building, but she thought that there might be some more buy-in if we were actually, somewhere closer to where law enforcement are situated. So I think we have to figure out the details, but I think if we have to wear masks, I just think that it's needed though to have the face-to-face to maintain those connections.
Can I ask who the target audience is for this? Would you include the public, supervisors, the professionals?
I believe it's geared more towards law enforcement and social workers, so they get to know each other. So I think some of the struggle that we were having for DEC cases is individuals were, just trying to do their job and didn't think about getting, law enforcement involved or getting human services involved. And so it's to try to connect and have face-to-face. So when they think like, oh, this could be a DEC case, I should call, the drug investigator.
Thank you.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, but I caution that you might set it up and you might have to change it or cancel it. Things are changing pretty rapidly again. So, but nothing wrong with getting it on the calendar. It's not, that it is changeable, I guess.
I would say the thought of it's a good idea. I think we should have an event like that. Our concern, at least on our end, is not wanting to do it. We would like to do it with the increased spread taking place, and we're running into close contacts and other issues here right now at the PD that we may be restricting events and in-person meetings too. And we're keeping a close eye on what recommendations public health has and CDC has. So I'm in favor of having an event, but we may have to pull out depending upon where we're at for infection levels. Well, it sounds like a non-answer, but that's,
I think the
I don't know
idea
that.
too was to have food and a social event. So, right, I think COVID could severely impact the whole goal that we're having with an event. Sheriff, any thoughts from your perspective?
No, I guess I'm in the same boat as Eric. It's a good idea, and I think what we need to get our cops to be able to do is wrap their heads around, what is DEC, what's the purpose of DEC, and what does it look like on our end, what they're seeing, that now we need to get other people involved, and maybe a training video or something along that lines, and then go into a kind of a meet and greet so they're comfortable and familiar with, who they might see from human services show up and things like that. Trying to get a 24/7 operation together for participation from my end, cost me a pile of money out of my budget. Either I need to pay them overtime to be there, or I need to provide beer to get them to show up. So it's that's why I don't have staff meetings on a regular basis, is because it costs me anywhere between $2,000 and $5,000 in overtime, depending on the staffing and bringing people in on their days off. So if I'm going to force them to be there, I need to pay them overtime. But I think I like the concept. I think it's a good idea. Practicality wise, if we're going to ask for them to volunteer to come in, we'll have to work an angle there.
I would just add that, we do have a longer video, a 2-hour training video, but I like the idea, as we did with our proxy tool, just a short to the point video can be very effective, where folks can watch that, get the gist of why it's important, and then hopefully start practicing those things. And then, we are going to get the deck training online so everybody can access that from wherever they're at. But again, that's a 2-hour training. So I do like the idea of a short video that could be helpful in the meantime. Since the investigators meetings have been on hold or not have been in person, we're not getting kind of that face-to-face monthly meeting between law enforcement and human services. And as Andrea spoke, just with the turnover and new staff, both in law enforcement and human services, it does, make sense to circle around with the training again.
Now, that being said, it's a bit more work, but I mean, if maybe it's a both. Maybe it's doing a shorter term if we think it's really important but not able to be in person. We do a shorter term, quick Zoom invite as a teaser to an in-person event as soon as we're able to do that, so that people get a chance to see who people are and then have a chance to meet in the hopefully not terribly distant future.
Yeah, I think
Less
a
than-
15-minute, half-hour video, and I know that becomes quite a production, but something, basically the nuts and bolts of DEC and why we do it and how we go about it. And that's something I forward out to my staff in an email. They sign off that they viewed it and understand it, and then we do a meet and greet down the road or something.
Yeah, I would recommend, I think the in-person is what's lacking. And that's how the relationships are formed with these. They're in 2 different buildings, they're in, very different departments, different professions. I would rather just actually put it on hold rather than, spend a bunch of time and energy planning something, COVID's I'd rather just, we can work on it, but not set a date or, given the feedback and given what's going on with COVID.
I think I agree, Andrea. I think that there's benefit far beyond DEC to those 2 sets of staff having some versions of those 2 sets of staff having opportunity, 3 sets of staff actually opportunity to be together and do that kind of in-person stuff. So they do a lot more work together than just DEC. I guess I don't know that we need to take action per se. I think that we can say we're in support of it with a watch of the outcomes of COVID at the time we're going to know in a few weeks again where we're at, I think. And if it seems like it's reasonable to move forward, have at it. Didn't need anything more than that.
Nope, I think I'm okay with that.
All right. Our oversight areas for today in terms of this group and the things that they oversee, the two areas that were outcomes of the Stepping Up initiative were housing and crisis enhancement. So I'll just do a really quick, a brief overview of what I know is happening in those two worlds. As you are potentially aware, the county is joining forces with West Central Regional Planning and the city of Menominee and potentially some of the other smaller villages in the county to do a housing study. It's aimed at both pulling together the data related to the need, but also looking at some low-hanging actionable items that we might be able to accomplish in fairly short order to improve the housing situation in Dunn County. And so we met yesterday, the city of Menominee's in. We have funding from the Community Foundation, and the West Central Regional Planning is going to work on a CDBG planning grant, which will create the cost. It'll be a low cost item for that to occur, and time frame for it. It'll include some public forums, some in-person or some whatever one-on-one interviews with key stakeholders, and the again, COVID related because of how goofy things are, but the anticipated time frame for that would be about 10 months from start to finish. So that's happening with that. On a different housing front, we also had the CDBG COVID grant for transitional, emergency and transitional housing through Stepping Stones and West Central Regional Plan, or West Cap. The two transitional houses are full. There is a wait list. Stepping Stones has seen unprecedented summer demand. Summer tends to be their largest demand for homeless assistance, which is interesting in and of itself. But they are seeing numbers that they've never seen before. So I think there are 30. Well, there were 31 like 2 weeks ago. Then there were 36 persons or households on their wait list, and I anticipate it would be bigger now. The moratorium for evictions ended on July 31st. So in fairly short order, landlords will be able to move forward with evictions, and I would imagine there will be some increase related to that as well. So on the low income end of things, or people who are experiencing obstacles to housing security, there's kind of unprecedented need amongst that group. So
I thought I saw a headline saying that President Biden had just signed an order extending the moratorium.
For some hot spot areas. It's not across the nation.
Okay.
I would just add what we're seeing with folks that are in different programs or coming out of jail, that there is a lack of safe places to go. So reentry, we've got that reentry grant through the end of the year. We're using that to help support people either staying in a hotel until hopefully they can get served with some of these other programs that are out there, or find their own safe housing. But we do have a lot of people living in what we would consider unsafe locations due to just the other people that are in the vicinity. But that's, so, even though we got the grant, it's just not enough to offset the need.
Well, and some of the other pieces, so if you just, I kind of keep an eye on this because of my connection to housing, but if you go out and do a quick search with in Zillow or Craigslist or any of the places that have rentals, there's maybe 1 or 2 advertisements in Menominee. So it isn't even a matter of affordability at this point in time. It's just a matter of pure, like they don't exist. So I don't know what that's going to ultimately mean, but it certainly is. We might have to consider, as we head into the fall here, we might have to consider some other options, be that, I know, Jim, you mentioned being down on the Marquette and Exchange in Milwaukee and seeing the homeless um, population there. I mean, we might have to consider tent encampments.
Don't think anybody wants that.
I don't think anybody wants that either. There's an issue as the what Stepping Stones has faced with the temporary house or the emergency housing is that as travel has opened up, the hotels can rent their rooms out to higher paying customers, and so there's a lesser availability of hotel rooms at the moment, and then a higher demand. So, and just from a like sort of from a purely county impact standpoint, where that comes into play most frequently, I would say, would be both on the jail exit. So if people get released from incarceration and they don't have a safe spot to go and they end up back in a bad situation, the likelihood they're going to back in jail is great. And then we have kids who can't be returned to parents because parents don't have safe and stable housing, can't access safe and stable housing. And then we have kiddos that are reaching the age of majority for whom we have a difficult time finding housing arrangements as well. So there are some direct county impacts to financially to the low income housing situation as well. In the area of crisis, I guess anything additional that anyone else knows or would like to add related to housing in Dunn County? I would say my neighbors, well, I don't know, I call them my neighbors, I don't know who they are, but they live at the end of the street. Their house was for sale, listed at $289. That was a nice enough house. It was listed at $289 and it sold for $310. So it went $30,000 over the asking price. Okay, crisis enhancements. So the other area of focus from the Stepping Up group was to look at crisis options. So Chief, you want to speak to QRTs?
Sorry about that. Yeah, I can talk about the QRTs. So right now we've got a planning group that's been meeting to look at implementing quick response teams, which is what the QRT stands for. What the quick response team would do is identify people who have recovered from non-fatal overdoses, as well as folks who are suffering from severe substance use disorders, primarily methamphetamine. So methamphetamine and opioids are the two primary target audience that we're looking at initially. And what this group would do is a multi-jurisdictional group, I should say, or multi-agency collaborative group is probably the better word to put it, made up of people from human services, law enforcement, peer respite, counseling, EMS,
Emergency.
like our fire department. Yep. So they'd be paramedics involved. And what they do is they actually go out and do and our Sarah with CJCC is also part of that too as well. And what they do is they will go and do in-person interventions with people. And this is a program that's been utilized with great success in Ohio and out on the East Coast. And they do these interventions and then try to motivate folks to go seek treatment. And then if they are willing to do so, and in some places they're getting near 50% of people that are accepting that, the QRT group will do what's called a warm handoff to treatment providers so they can get assessed and scheduled for some kind of treatment. And then if they don't have the financial means to do that, then we do warm handoff to help them get economic support through human services. And we work to try to help them overcome barriers to their treatment, provide wraparound services by checking in on them, et cetera. And we have some partners in the community like the Monarch House and Northwest Connections that are looking to assist. So we're in development for that. And we're hoping that we can get a program put in place sometime early next year. It may get expedited if I'm successful in receiving the CASA grant, which you folks helped support, which I thank you. That was submitted, and I should find out in the next 4 to 6 weeks if we receive that, and that's funding in the amount of just shy of $600,000 for a 3-year program, and that would help fund the QRT. So I think it's an exciting program. If we don't receive the funding for it, that's okay. There are still things that we can do through planning, just on a bit smaller scale. So we're working through those possibilities of what it would be like if we had the money, and then also if we don't have the money. So we just had an initial meeting here not too long ago, and we're hoping to have another one here real soon after we get some feedback on how these other groups have communicated with each other, shared information like memorandums of understanding, because of course there's privacy laws that are put into place, HIPAA, our protected data from law enforcement, et cetera. So I think it's actually pretty exciting stuff, and those communities that have done it have seen their overdoses go down significantly, and people actually following through the treatment and having success with it, and crime being reduced. So it's, I think, a win for everybody potentially if we can get this to move forward. So thank you to everybody who's been helping on that so far. And we're hoping to bring in more partners as we come along.
The other thing that's happening on the crisis front is that Human Services has been working with an organization called Beacon. They operate some small residential facilities. They have one in Chippewa Falls, and they are looking at actually the development of a small resource here in Dunn County to look at short-term 45 to 60 day either crisis stabilization for some of our more challenging consumers, or step down resources for people that are in hospitalization. I am the Institutes for the Mental Disease like Winnebago, or a residential placements that we can back them off and get them into the community, build some supports, and hopefully get them long-term out of placement. So we actually have a meeting here in a half an hour with Beacon to move forward on that project. So it's a kind of a new initiative. I don't know anyone else that's sort of proposing doing the same thing that we're proposing doing. It's not inexpensive, but it's a redeployment of resources that we're already expending in a different way, and hope we can get a better bang for our buck out of them. So that's happening in Crisis World. Sarah, staff report.
All right, written staff report was included in the meeting packet. I would add that National Night Out was held last night. So CJCC had a table along with Sheriff's Department and the city police put it on. It was a really nice event. A lot of families came out. We ran out of suckers before the night was over. We had like 200 suckers. So, and 400 water balloons. So we had a good time. But that was the only addition I had to the staff report, unless there were questions.
Sounds like not. Okay. Frequent math users data project. So last month, we had a good conversation in this group about an area of focus that we might take on as a leadership group of looking at methamphetamine in Dunn County, and what we might be able to do to start to actually take that on head on. And so we decided to start with the data. And so Sarah, do you want to give an update on that part of the project?
You bet. So the data team led by Katie Shelley has met a couple of weeks ago and really framed up the project to really pull different data from different agencies into a shared Google spreadsheet, so we can really start to identify the frequent users or the frequent folks that are cycling through our various agencies. So we were able to compile the Menominee Police methamphetamine arrests with the Dunn County Sheriff's Office methamphetamine arrests, along with the Clerk of Court's methamphetamine cases or charges that came through the court system. These were both for possession of methamphetamine and with the intent to deliver or manufacture methamphetamine. We looked at the period from 2018 to 2020 to see really who are these frequent meth users that are cycling through our criminal justice system here in Dunn County. There were 315 individuals on the list for that period of time, which to me was surprising. I expected maybe 100, just folks keep cycling through, but it was 315, which really kind of shows how widespread the challenges are out there in our community. Of those 315 individuals, 71 had repeat contacts or were cycling through multiple agencies. And of those 71, the analysis is not complete. We were just really getting going. We did find that approximately 70 or of 71 individuals, 44 were referred to the top program, 44% were referred to the top program. But only 10 of those individuals started the top program. And then 1 graduated, 5 were terminated, and 4 are currently in the program. So approximately 14% of those frequent flyers are in our top program. Taking a look at the treatment court, the same percentage, 31 of 71 were referred to treatment court. And the numbers there were not fully kind of analyzed. But a number of them were referred, some were in the program and terminated. Probably the majority of them were terminated, and some were graduates of our treatment court program, and some are currently in the program right now. We've got more work that we're wanting to do. We really want to look at the outcomes of these 71 individuals. I did see, looking at our our court calendar for tomorrow, some of these individuals are finally getting adjudicated tomorrow. So part of the challenge is the court cases are taking a year or more to get through the case. And the individuals I looked at, one of them had 20 cases in surrounding counties that were all open during this period of time. And that was just one individual of the 71. So we're wanting to look beyond just Dunn County to really look at these 71. And they're just a snapshot in period of time of people that we identified. There are many more out there, but there's more of an impact that we're seeing. We're also looking at the bond amounts, or if it was a signature bond, cash bond, if they were released, looking to see were they put in jail, what were the outcomes there, prison, what were the outcomes there. So as I said, we're just getting started, but the data is pretty interesting and is definitely different than some of the assumptions that we might have had. Some of those 71s were never referred to any of the programs that we have, probably half of them. So I think there's areas for improvement, but we're really wanting to really look at the data before we're starting to jump to solutions. But some of those solutions can be low cost, just adjustments, and then others we might want to look at other ways of handling this kind of the frequent. It's not just meth use; it's also other crimes that are associated with this group as well. And I defer to Chief or Chris and Aaron. They've been active in that work group, and Katie. For any additional details that you'd like to share with the group.
I would just say I too was surprised by the number. I did not expect it to be as large. And as Sarah indicated, I just did a quick pop while we were looking at it through several of the cases, and every single participant that I looked at, or every single person that I looked at, and I looked at maybe half a dozen, all had several cases in other counties. And so it's not just our system, but others. And then the other piece that was, is that these are just people who had drug charges. Like, the sheriff's been stated on many occasions, some people will float through the system without ever having a drug charge, but all of their other criminal activity is very drug related. They're stealing stuff and pawning stuff and selling stuff and writing bad checks and doing all those sorts of things to support a habit. But I think there was a lot of potential area for small change that might make a difference, start to make a difference for us. So interesting project. Katie, Chief, Aaron?
I just had a question. I might have missed it. So there were 315 individuals with meth cases. Did this work group determine how many were the frequent flyers?
Yeah, so of that 315, 71 were identified as frequent flyers during that period. But if you look at some of those names, we've seen them before, or they went to prison, and that's why they're not on the list during those three years. But during that snapshot for 2018 through 2020, 71 out of 315 were identified as frequent customers of the criminal justice system.
How are they determined frequent? Is it more than one?
One or more than one police contact, more than one criminal case.
Okay.
Or some of them were just regarded as being, and this was mainly from MPD, but just being known as, maybe other charges are coming in, but they were regarded as being a frequent meth user, leading to those charges.
So we're going to run those names against child welfare data. We can't do it. We can't release the information by person because of confidentiality, but we can do it by aggregate. How many of those individuals also have child welfare contact, and how many kids does that involve, as well as mental health and treatment resources that we can track some of that to see how many of those people have touched. I think anecdotally, I know from our jail rosters, typically it's a pretty small percentage of people that have touched the mental health system, at least the publicly funded mental health system. So, and there's a lot of area potentially for intervention there as well. So the hope is that we will be able to come to this group with that data in a pretty package with a bow, and then spend some time as a group really drilling into where we might want to go in terms of crafting some changes and some either programming or interventions or whatever that we can put our energies into to try to address what we find.
I'll just throw in 2 cents here and I think what we're discovering is all of us, everybody on this meeting, we spend 90% of our time dealing with 10% of our population of 45,000 people in Dunn County. And if we can clip, 10% of that 10% off and do something different with them, I think we'll be making an impact. But I mean, that's the reality. And most of us on here are supervisors. 90% of your time as a supervisor is focused on 10% of your employees. It's the same thing with law enforcement. 90% of our time is focused on 10% of the population. We've never been to Jim Tripp's house for a meth bust, but there's, he's in the 90% that we don't deal with on a daily basis, so, but, we need to really focus on that 10% and start curbing that somehow.
I don't know. I have grave concerns about Jim Tripp. You should have saw how he was dressed yesterday.
I was on a meeting with him last week. I think he looked like Colonel Sanders. I think he was in a white suit.
Go ahead, Chris. You might just as well tell him.
It was so funny. So partway through the West Wisconsin Regional Planning meeting, Jim started laughing, and the regional planning person was like, oh my gosh, she's like, I was wondering, did I have something on my face or did I say something funny? Jim had looked down and he had on 2 totally different shoes. One sandal and one tennis shoe.
Supervisor Tripp, we have an ADRC that assists elderly people.
He left. He left. the scene.
He's hiding.
Happens more than you think, though. A lot of different
Spoken from a true experience.
Pay no attention to what's below those robes.
It was really funny. So yeah, so on the way out, who was it? Oh, Supervisor Steen took Jim's arm to lead him to his car. So he got home safely.
Okie dokie.
All right. Anything else related to methamphetamine at the moment? All right. Monitoring bias in programs.
All right, so we have already a kind of comprehensive recidivism project going on with our various programs. So what we're going to do kind of future oriented is start to track the racial makeup of participants. So really trying to examine that racial bias through a lens of participation. So rather than kind of going backwards looking, we're going to go forwards looking. Backwards looking we can do at some point, but that would be a lot of pulling of individual files or looking at different systems to obtain that information. So really just trying to look at through that lens moving forward. But we want to ensure that we should know the data as far as the number of folks that come through the various programs that are of different ethnicities. So we can see that, examine if there is any perhaps bias that is creeping into the work that we do. So really just an update on that.
Questions, comments? Okay. CESF grant and digital evidence system.
So this is the DOJ coronavirus emergency supplemental funding grant, the second round that we received. The funding's going to be used for the filtration system in the judicial center. So we've got facilities working on that. It's also going to be used for squad laptops, IT, and Duzo's working on that. UV filtration devices for the judicial center. Chief Deputy Marshal's already made those purchases, so that's moving forward. I think really the digital evidence system is the one where folks were kind of re-examining the different systems that were out there. But I was just hoping to perhaps hear from Andrea or Chief and Sheriff, just kind of where you're at with that project.
Sarah, I don't have much to add. I've met with, it's been Chris King and I believe Scott McRoberts from the Sheriff's Office about the digital evidence software. I believe the law enforcement wanted to look at something that worked with Zerker. And I think we're just sort of in a holding pattern. I'm waiting for more information from law enforcement.
Yeah, the whole evidence library is with the Zerker, with our in-house network system right now. They haven't perfected that, and I think it's part of the, so we can pay that same amount to Zerker, that our system automatically flows to send it up to the DA's office, or buy another software package that now there's double work on our end to put it in that system. If we can get it through Zerker, which we already have that software to do, it would be a much easier flow. I think part of it comes down to the speed of the internet that the state provides to the DA's office as well yet. And I think IT was working on part of that issue as well. I don't know if Dan had come up with a solution or if you've talked to Dan about that, Andrea.
Yeah, Dan's working on it. I think that's a year's process. It's not a short-term process, given dealing with state IT. It's something that we're hoping, we'll make progress on and in the future be able to use. But I guess my concerns with Zerker is they've been difficult to get some feedback in a timely manner. I would prefer to go through iCrime Fighter, but I need, everyone else to be on board with that. So I'm, if we can make iCrime Fighter work, that's great, but I don't think we'll have the digital speed falls in line with the date of the grant.
Right, so the project has to be completed by the end of the year, end of the calendar year, and then we have to have the bills paid by the end of January. So, we'll wanna, and I don't know how quickly things can, if Zerker can just get turned on and there we go, we got a bill to pay, or if it will take more implementation and rollout, but just, keeping in mind that it's already August, if you can believe that, the end of the year is going to be quickly approaching. So we want to use those funds if we can for that system, whichever system you decide on is best.
Dave's got a question.
Yeah, a couple of questions. So the Zerker system, that would be if we went with that, that would be the system that the sheriff's department would have to resubmit the information. Is that the way I understand it?
Other way around, I think.
The other way around?
The other way around, iCrime Fighter is a separate software system. So my staff would have to take it out of Zerker, actually out of our video library system, and feed that to iCrime Fighter, where it's already attached in the Zerker system, and it basically feeds. It can be uploaded and feed basically the same way as iCrime Fighter without adding another software. And the price is about the same, and the yearly cost is less with Zerker than it is for iCrime Fighter over time. iCrime Fighter, I think, is 12 to 14,000 annually, where initially that would be the initial cost with Zerker, but the licensing for that in the future would be less than half that.
Okay. Just a thought. Other counties must be facing the same thing. Could you reach out to your sheriff's association and see if anybody else has come up with a way to get around this?
And it's some of them are using iCrime Fighter because they don't have Zerker. Zerker's kind of in the process of trying to implement this system as part of the holdup right now. And Chief, you maybe been more in the loop on this than I have with Zerker. I haven't been attending these meetings. Marshall and my captain and one of my sergeants have been more involved with it than I have been in just giving me updates.
Your understanding is what my understanding is that Zerker is just working through the process of getting the digital evidence, how it can be transferred to another agency and opening it. And that's kind of the holdup at the moment. It's similar to their analytics software that they're working on right now that we're looking to try to purchase. When that end date is, when they're going to be able to go live, I'm not sure. When Commander King returns back to the office next week, we'll be talking about the Zerker and then the digital evidence management, because that's on the radar. Because my understanding was the grant was going to need to come due here within the next few months, and I think Sarah confirmed that it has to be done by the end of the year. So I want to make sure that we can at least move forward with this and get the digital evidence up to the DA's office in a timely manner.
Right. So the police department has the same situation as our sheriff's department. Okay.
Yep, we all went together on the same records management system. It helped reduce costs and it improves information sharing and intelligence sharing and that kind of stuff. And we shared the same RMS before that as well. And we
And
figured we may as well continue that route.
along with Menominee PD, we've got Boyceville, Elk Mound, and Colfax on the same system as well. So if we can get it to work with Zerker, they would all be able to upload their digital video evidence and photos and stuff right through that to the DA's office instead of each individual agency having to purchase or be involved in the iCrime Fighter software as well.
All right.
So
thank-
sorry.
I was just thanking them for straightening me out.
So can I just clarify my understanding? So the understanding would be that, or the issue would be both the PD and the Sheriff's Department and the municipalities have Zerker, but Zerker's not ready to go yet.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay.
I don't know what their implementation or release date is for that.
Okay.
But it would certainly streamline things.
And iCrime Fighter could be implemented somewhat immediately, but then results in dual responsibility to get the information into it and ongoing licensing costs.
Redundancy of loading it to two different systems and then additional costs over time.
One of the things that we may have to take a look at, depending on the timelines with this grant, is doing a purchase or a purchase agreement with Zerker, so that way we can at least submit a bill to the grant to be reimbursed, because I hate for us to lose out on that reimbursement opportunity. I mean, we'll eventually have to pay for it at some point, but that might be something that we need to explore.
Okay, to be continued. All right, we have 5 minutes left, and it seems like one of the wonders of this group, of us being together, is that we can collectively keep a pulse on things that are, I don't know, upcoming areas of focus or things that are happening across the system. We have kind of two agenda items that we call local challenges and emerging trends. But what Sarah and I talked about was just, if you each would take just a couple of minutes to just, if you have anything noteworthy that's happening in your agency or department that's worth sharing with the group in terms of criminal justice kind of related focus, if you wouldn't mind just giving us an update. And I would start maybe with Judge Peterson or Katie and just ask you if you could give us a little blurb about what's to be expected with the new judges and what that rollout looks like.
Well, just a reminder, we have the investiture for the two new judges on Friday. They've both been officially sworn in. That'll be a ceremonial event on Friday. We have been transferring cases, and Katie could probably tell you more about that, but it's a fairly elaborate process. I know that I've been scheduling, which makes me very happy, scheduling most of my criminal cases the last few weeks here in the branch 3, but I think there's something like 250 from each branch 1 and 2 will be going into branch 3, and we'll be following pretty much a very similar pattern for intake. And the judges are currently in a 2-week mentoring program. They will be here Friday morning and then also Friday afternoon for their investiture, and in different counties next week. And then on the week of August 30th through September 3rd, they'll be attending judicial college. And after that, then pretty much they're going to be turned loose. And they're going to be new judges ready to go. So, Katie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're busy right now trying to get all the cases transferred over. So everything on Judge Smeltzer's calendar is going to go to Judge Meyer unless she has a conflict. And then I'm going to reevaluate all the cases and divide some of Judge Peterson's cases, Judge Meyer's cases, and give them to Judge Wagner. I'm seeing an increase in requests for substitution of judges being filed. I stayed late last night and I got through Judge Smeltzer's calendar through July of 2022. He has stuff on his calendar till 2025 that I have to go into every single day, individual cases. It's not easy. It's not hard, just a pain in the butt to do, honestly. So we're working through it. We'll get through that and we'll see a lot more influx of cases. And Judge Peterson will get assigned more cases probably, and we'll shift some over, and just bear with me. It's going to take a little while to get through. Otherwise, we're just staying busy.
I'm going to volunteer something that isn't specific to criminal justice, but we've made mention of COVID-19. I have a feeling we are on the cusp of a surge in the county that is likely, I can't guarantee, but it's likely to require the reinstatement of safety protocols up to and including closing county buildings, except by appointment, requiring all individuals to be masked when they are away from their workstation or they're in proximity to somebody else. We are seeing not just the population, unvaccinated population getting ill, we're seeing more breakthrough cases. We have 2 breakthrough cases of individuals who attended our last county board meeting. And that's just one meeting. So just a heads up. And we could waste time talking about why, but the bottom line is we are definitely experiencing a surge. And in fact, and just anecdotally, a neighbor of mine was explaining that their mother needed to go to the hospital. I think it was a blood transfusion or something, but in any event, there were no hospital beds available in Eau Claire. There were none in Menominee. There were none in Rochester, and they had to be transported to La Crosse. So I just have a feeling we're on the verge of having to approach lockdown again. Yay!
On that happy note. Andrea, anything to share out of the DA's office?
Nope.
Sheriff?
Catalytic converter thefts are, I think, causing Chief's agency and mine some headaches. I mean, they're rolling up with cordless sawzalls and cutting catalytic converters from cars all over the place. They're breaking into scrap yards and stealing catalytic converters because they can sell them for $400 to $800, and they can swipe catalytic converters in about 30 seconds with a cordless sawzall, and it's running rampant. And I have no doubt that they're all connected to drugs and methamphetamines. They know, they've figured out they can sell catalytic converters for $400 to $800, and that's a lot of meth for the week. So
Where do they sell them to?
well, the funny part is Kate Inger's Auto Salvage in Downing will buy them, but they're actually breaking into Kate Inger's and taking their catalytic converters. So my understanding is there's a place, I mean, there's places all over, but there's a place in the Twin Cities that pays top dollar for them. There's a place over by over in Pierce County that will buy them and load them up in a U-Haul and take them to Texas, where they can sell them to, somebody for top dollar. And it's a cradium, or I can't remember the name of the chemical now that's in a catalytic converter that makes them so valuable, but that's causing us some headaches. And the people that are having them stolen, that's the biggest thing, is start the car, and all of a sudden their exhaust is extremely loud because their catalytic converter has been cut from underneath their vehicle. I think the Chiefs had some at some car dealerships in town here that they've taken multiple catalytic converters off from vehicles sitting on the lots in the middle of the night.
Ouch.
So park your cars in your garage if you can.
Aaron, anything?
Recently, the state budget just got passed, and there's been a reallocation of positions within the Department of Corrections. So some agent positions across the state have been converted to other positions. Some positions have been pulled out of the prison to create additional positions within the Division of Community Corrections. So ultimately what that means for our group here, our part of the state has received 5 new corrections field supervisor positions that'll be allocated across the state. As a result of this, one of our agent positions from Dunn County has been reallocated to those positions. So we went down 1 agent in this office. So Andrea and Judge Peterson, if you can issue a few more citations and straight jail sentences rather than probation cases, that would be very helpful to our office.
How many do you have, Aaron? How many agents do you have in your office?
It'll be 7 agents in this office.
You have 8 now and you'll lose 1.
We had 2 vacancies. 1 was filled, 1 just was reallocated. So.
Okay. Do more with less. Dennis, anybody? Sarah, anything to report?
I think I've done enough for today.
All right, David, anything you want to say? Jim?
Just a question, really, the opioid settlement, is there any word on what kind of a share Dunn County might get, or what might be the destination for that money?
I've not heard anything, Jim.
I haven't either.
It's probably a little premature at this point, but we should get something. I don't anticipate a lot, but should be some money coming.
All right, we are 5 minutes over. I will let you go to lunch. Thanks for your contribution.
Good day.
Thanks, everybody.